when I was a seminary professor, we had a guest preacher come in for chapel, and he said something like the following: if think of the 5 most exciting times in your life. If 3 of them didn't happen in church, something is wrong. I said, "Next." It didn't happen. Um, and not to sound more cynical than I really feel, I mean, I think church is wonderful in theory. I think some people connect with the idea of church more than others, and I know had to become really honest with myself over the years that, church for me is not the place where things happen. And I mean, thank you, COVID, for giving me the space to think about that stuff, because not only do I not have to go today, I can't go today. So anyway, so that's one thing. On the other side, a few years ago, I was speaking with a friend of mine who's a spiritual director, and we were just talking about things that interest me and things that I like. And I said to her, I just like going outside and chopping wood or raking the leaves or cutting the grass. I just enjoy doing that. And she said, well, you should listen for God's presence when you do that. And I was like, yeah, I guess maybe I should. Um, so my point is this: I think our experiences and our experience of God are very much connected. And specifically, I would say that I can speak for myself. Let me just speak for myself entirely. I don't want to speak for anybody else. But my understanding of God and my sense of experiencing God is very much tied to my experiences. I mean, that's not a very daring thesis, I think. It's rather obvious, but it's also not obvious at the same time. And, I mean, some of you maybe, I shouldn't presume too much, but in communities that I've been a part of in my life, Christian communities, your experiences are irrelevant to your theology, right? How many here have grown up and understand that? Okay, and I mean, a good number of you, not all of you, which is great, but some of you do. Your experiences get in the way because you're a sinful worm, right? And don't even bring up your intuition, because that's where Satan has his little home inside your heart, right? With your intuitions. And I think just the older I've gotten, the more I never really bought that, but I didn't know why. But I do think now our experiences, our intuitions, even our imaginations, I think, when it comes to theology, what are we if we're not that? Right. So I guess speaking of, the experience of God, that's the thought that I've been on lately, the past couple of years, just ruminating how my view of God has changed. And therefore my experience of God has changed because of stuff that happens, just because of life, you know? Um, so for me, one thing is that, this started way back in graduate school when I was doing a degree in Hebrew Bible and ancient Near Eastern stuff. And it was wonderful. It was great. But I could see within 2 months, well, actually by October of my first semester, I could see the holes in what I was taught for many years before that. I could see that something wasn't working. And I had this moment where I came home from a day of classes, and I just sort of pulled up to the back of our apartment, and we had a small child. My son, Eric, was about 2 years old at the time. And I came inside and I just put my knapsack down and I just stood in the kitchen. I was staring at the refrigerator. And I said, I don't think Abraham was a real person, which was like a hard thing to admit because I had been reading things. I mean, what kind of a faith did I have where that was so important and so non-negotiable that it took a month, right, of just reading stuff and talking with people to say, no, I actually see the point now, right? So for me, long story short, it's processing the Bible for me has been an experience that I have had that has affected how I think about God. And the words that keep coming up for me is mystery. That's been the operative word for me for years and years and years, and I'm thankful that it has been because, I think that's a way of honoring God's otherness, but also God's connection with us and God's presence with us. The big thing for me, I think of myself, again, this may not be everybody, but evolution, cosmology, quantum mechanics, which who here understands quantum mechanics? Yeah, right. Put your put your damn hands down, Jace. That's you do not. I know you don't know that stuff. All right. Anyway, um, but thinking of like, people have been making boats for at least 70,000 years. I just find that amazing. You know, some people, sometime back, way back, many years ago, said, we're here. We need to get over there. There's a body of water in front of us, and either the tiger's going to eat us, or these people are going to kill us, or there's no food left. So one guy said, let's just make a boat. And so they did, and they went across, right? I came across a picture on a Smithsonian magazine online of this little lion cub named Sasha, which was just an adorable thing. Were not the fact that she was also frozen in the permafrost for 28,000 years, but she was beautifully preserved. And it got me thinking about that cat could be alive right here, and I couldn't tell the difference. You know what I mean? It's like it's the same, and it's 28,000 years ago. That's the kind of stuff that makes me think, what kind of a God are we talking about? What does it mean for God to be present here with us? Was God present there? And my conclusion is, well, I have to believe that, but what are the implications of that, right? What are the implications of thinking that maybe God cared about, well, I hope so, their humanity, which is like our humanity. I mean, if I were transported back in time, I'd last the morning. I'd probably die of something or get eaten by something. And if they were here today, they wouldn't understand why there are so many old people, like over 30, right? You know, you're missing your teeth. How does that work? Um, but yeah, but the point is that I just thinking about scientific stuff like that affects how I think about God. It makes my view of God more expansive. It makes it less restrictive. It makes it less, I don't know. I mean, okay, the Abrahamic religions have been around for roughly 1% of the time that human-like people have been running around for about 300,000 years. The Bible never talks about that kind of stuff, and neither did my church ever, right? So what do we do with that? What do I do with that, right? Um, Again, things that I wish I understood better than I do, but I think about space-time, not that I understand it, but there are some implications there for just how the universe works. And it's not like it used to be. The universe is not what it used to be. Newtonian worldview where things work according to mechanical laws and you can sort of figure everything out, and that works to a certain extent, but there's a whole nature of reality that you needed a new math to explain it. And quantum physicists still don't know what it is, right? And I just think to myself, okay, if God exists, what are we dealing with here? If the nature of the cosmos itself is so mysterious, I think we need a God to match that mysteriousness and then some. So it just lightens me up a little bit to think about God, and my experience of God is more immediate. That's the effect it has on me. I've become, probably like most of you, over the years, I woke up one morning and I said, I think I'm a panentheist. Because that's the only thing that makes sense to me. I sort of have come to process theology accidentally through struggling with stuff on my own. And until Tripp gives me an education on it, but, and Tom Ward as well. Um, but I really do think all these things drive me to the same conclusion. I'm out of my element talking about God. The only thing I can talk about is my experience of God, which is up and down, in and out, all around, right? Because we're human. And the notion of God, this is a trigger for many people, but the notion of God being fundamentally angry, where that anger needs to be appeased, makes absolutely no sense to me. And it stopped making sense to me when I was in my basement many years ago, all by myself, trying to think through this stuff. And I realized, you have to find a new way to walk forward with this faith that you have. Many of you know my story. I left Westminster Theological Seminary, not to talk about all that stuff, but I was right. That's the bottom line. Um, I objectively was right. Okay, just no question about that. But when I left, I went through I guess what I can call an atheist phase that lasted about a year or so. It wasn't militant. I wasn't open about it. It was just inside. Everything was dark. Why? Well, because I had my faith written for me. That narrative was written for me. And again, many of you know this in churches, like you're told what you got to believe and you can't buck the system at all. So I was unused to working certain muscles, in terms of my life and my faith. And I couldn't wait to get out of there because I was sick and tired of being told what to do and what to think. So I got out and I was so happy for about 6 months. And then it all came crashing in on me. And I remember the moment standing in my bedroom, staring out the window. I did a lot of staring during this period. I don't always have conversations with refrigerators like I did back in the graduate school, um, I was standing there and looking out the window, and I said to myself, I don't know if I believe anything anymore. And then I heard this little voice, and not to get too weird about this, it wasn't really a voice, but this thought came to my head. Well, Pete, you got what you wanted. Nobody tells you what to believe. So what do you believe? And I literally said to myself, I got nothing. I don't know where to go with this, right? So for me, that started a process, and I'll end with this here. That started a process of learning that there's a different way of doing this, right? The experience of God is not, again, this is me talking, but I think I'm preaching to the choir here. The experience of God is not primarily memorizing a catechism, right? Or having a good theology that you can defend apologetically and things like that. I think it really comes down to our own personal experience of God. And I think that doesn't happen unless God is in us. And I think the Spirit is in us, in all of us, in everything. That's why I'm a panentheist, right? It's in everything and everyone. I don't see any other way to look at this, given things like the size of the universe, or God is enmattered, as some people say. God is involved in all of matter, everything. God is the energy behind everything. Everything. Everything owes its existence to God. That's why I can't talk. That's why I'm becoming a process guy. I don't think you can talk about God's existence in any casual way, because God is existence. God is the basis of existence. We can't talk about God as a being in some tangible sense, because God is being. God's the ground of being, as Tillich would say. So all those things to say is that my own journey has brought me to a point where experiencing God means something very different than it did before. And it's much more, I would say, relaxed and peaceful. And I have a hard time hating people now for their theology. I might laugh at them, but I won't hate them for it. Right. So, yeah, That's all I want to say. That's it. Thank you, folks. Yeah.